So here's some examples of patternicity. What do you see here? A horse. Well, it's a rock formation, but yeah, it looks like a horse. A horse, of course, unless it's a frog. How about here? What do you see? A cow, right there. So I'll prime the brain. Now do you see the cow? And if I go back, there's your cow again. How about here? Yep, Dalmatian dog, there he is. Okay, so I prime the brain by showing you the pattern, what it's supposed to be, take it away, and it pops back out even though the red line's not there. How about here? Planet Saturn, right? That's just, that one's for Neil. How about here? What do you see? Nothing, right. That's good because there's nothing there. But if you think you saw something, see me afterwards because that's a sign of brain damage. No, just kidding. We know that patternicity is related to superstition and control. For example, the environment you're in, the more anxiety-producing, the more failure-prone, the less control you have, the more likely you are to see illusory patterns. Baseball in America, by the way, I should point, I know rugby's a big sport here. It was in all the papers this morning when I was reading the paper. But I want to give a shout out to Cadell Evans, the first Australian to ever win the Tour de France. Yes. Anyway, Wade Boggs, one of the greatest batters of all time in American baseball, was super superstitious. I mean, this guy was so superstitious, he had to have chicken before every single game. He knew so many recipes for chicken, he wrote his own cookbook called Foul Tips. You know, foul, anyway. But only for batting, not for fielding. Fielders are almost always successful. 90 to 95% of the time, they successfully field the ball and throw it to the appropriate player. Batters fail 7 out of 10 times. The best players in the game, the Hall of Famers, fail 7 out of 10 times. Right? So they have a lot of superstitions associated with that. Turns out whatever you're thinking about tends to influence what you think you see in an ambiguous figure. And of course, since we're all environmentally sensitive, thanks to people like Tim Flannery telling us about the environment, you all see the dolphins in this picture, right? There's a dolphin there. That's a dolphin. You see that dolphin? There he is. There's a dolphin. That's a dolphin tail there, guys. Or of course, in this ambiguous figure, you all see, well, you know what you see. You see the Via Uno sandals. Carefully cropped and I suspect photoshopped. Where there's ambiguous figures like this, our brain scans for models in our memory to match the data coming in. What is that? Of course, it's a lamp. This is a conflicting photo. When you look up, because you're getting conflicting data. This looks normal, that does not look normal, but unless I rotate it, and then you see it's a staged photo. These are examples of what I'm trying to say is that as those patterns come in, our brain forms these models into our memory of these neural networks. Then when new data comes in, we look for a match, right? So when you see, like, for example, the possible crate illusion, the boards seem to bend around one another. And so, of course, that's easy to do in 3D and 2D, but how about the 3D? Here's Jerry Andrus' 3D impossible crate illusion. I mean, it is so weird. And here's how it's done. The photographer is way off that side over there. And this board appears to be overlapped with this one appears to be overlapped with that one, and so on. But even knowing how the trick is done, it's still very powerful. This is a new illusion discovered recently. The Leaning Tower of Pisa is not actually leaning. No, just kidding. Which one appears to lean more to the right than the other one? Of course, this one. Why does it do that? By the way, this is the same photographs just side by side, just to show you that. You can see that that angle from A8 to 10 is the same as it is there. It's the exact same photos side by side. Because normally when you look up at tall buildings, they're converging, but they're not in this particular case. The other answer, that's the scientist's answer. My answer is that I think your brain is comparing this angle, which is fairly narrow, compared to this angle, which is fairly wide. And so that throws you off. And I can prove that with this photo here. Again, same photo side by side. You're comparing this angle with this angle, not this angle with that angle. So these kinds of illusions help us understand how the brain works. For example, we tend to see faces everywhere we look. You probably recognize this fellow. But one of these photographs looks a little odder than the other one. Which one? That's right. The one on the left looks a little weird. I'll rotate it so it's now on the right. So what's happening here is you're doing a quick brain scan to identify, one, it's a face, two, it's a human face, three, it's the face of the President of the United States. Boom, that just takes less than a second. Then you do it more slower because there's two cellular types in the temporal lobes just above your ears there in your brain where the facial recognition software operates, the neural networks there, quickly and slowly. The slower one, the slower cells are scanning details, and then you begin to notice. We see faces everywhere. There's the face on Mars, up close. It's not Martians building monuments to humans, so we'll go there and colonize them. No, it's just an eroded mountain. But if you squint, you can get the data more granular, and then your facial recognition software pops in, and you see the face again. And there's faces everywhere we look. There's the happy face on Mars. There's a face, the Indian head in Canada. It's a valley, a huge valley. This is a new one somebody sent me. Do you see the face on the garage door there? All right. One of my favorites, the Nun Bun. There's our Lady of the Chicago Underpass. Somebody thinks they saw in this flame the Pope. Here's the Virgin Mary on a grilled cheese sandwich. There she is. It's quite striking. I don't know what the Virgin Mary is supposed to look like, but it looks like Madonna to me. Or maybe Jane Russell. I'll wrap up with my favorite, the Virgin Mary on the side of a glass building. Richard Dawkins, myself, and the amazing Randy went there. It's in Clearwater, Florida. It's a two-story building, a bank building that a Christian church purchased, and you could buy candles and light them. There was wax all over the ground. They trying to make their mortgage payment by selling candles. But anyway, we went there on a Good Friday, and they were there in their crutches and wheelchairs and so on. You can see this huge two-story crucifix there. It turns out we walked around the back of the building, and wherever there's a sprinkler head and a palm tree, you get this staining. Turns out Clearwater, Florida isn't. The water isn't very clear. It's sort of mineralized and stains the windows. In fact, I found another miracle on the back side of the building. They started to wipe off. I guess you can only have one miracle per building, and they didn't want it there. So again, we always have to ask ourselves, is it really a miracle of Mary, the more likely question, or is it a miracle of Marge?